You have the app. Now what do we do? How do we get it out there? Today we're going to talk about how you grow and launch an app in 2022. We're talking about the exact tactics and strategies you need to win in the app space in 2022. This is Raw Startup. As the founder of Vivino, I've been through this journey with Vivino, grown from 0 users all the way to almost 60 million users all over the world. We also have a guest on. Jacob Mikkelsen is the CEO and founder of Reflectly, with over 10 million users around the world. They own and run 22 different apps. I promise you, he knows how to grow an app, and even grow an app bootstrapped with very little money.
If you look at the cohorts of those, it's 20 times more valuable to be the user that are coming from a journal, searching for a journal app versus the TikTok user over a 3-year period.
We'll tell you exactly what works today. Make a list of 9 different tactics and strategies that work right now. With Vivino, roughly 70% of the growth comes from number 1 on this list. So do look forward to seeing what that is. If you don't have an app yet, please make sure you check out my other video on how to build an app. Also, do consider subscribing to the channel. A lot of good stuff here. With that, let's get going. Number 9, strategic partnerships. Imagine you make a partnership with this big company and use their distribution, a real shortcut to growth. I've seen many startups being hopeful around this, but just be aware that it usually fails. I've literally seen startups fail because they relied on such a partnership. Don't be one of those.
It sounds good, right? That you're going to grow through each other's audiences and these types of things. I think it's very hard to do in the app world, because any app where you sort of do it with someone else, someone is going to feel like they're giving more than what they're receiving. And so to align those incentives will be a tough one for you. And I will much more look into things that you are in control of than strategic partnership.
The core problem here is alignment. Can you offer as much to the big company as they offer to you? Usually that's a no, and that's why it doesn't work. So what should you do here then? Well, wait till you have a lot of leverage. Wait till you have something you can give them that they cannot get otherwise. Ask yourself the following: can you offer this big company something they cannot get otherwise? If the answer isn't a clear yes, you should not be doing a partnership. At Vivino, we've actually done this successfully, but at a later stage in our journey. We had something they could not get: a big wine database with wine reviews, ratings, and so on. Today, Vivino works with Samsung and Snap, and it's quite a success, but don't try and do this early on. Number 8. Organic social media. We're talking about social posts on own channels like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. To be very clear here, organic posts on social media usually aren't a real growth channel. It can be good for keeping an already existing audience engaged, for retention and testing and so on, but usually not to launch or grow an app unless you have an audience already.
In general, we use organic social posting as sort of just as testing to find what we should run ads against.
Some people think they can build an audience first, say on Instagram, and then build an app for them later. It can be done if you have the right audience.
There is these, that build an audience first and then go to the app.
Yeah.
Then they build apps afterwards. And I've never experienced that, right? But I've seen it out there, and some of them are successful, most not. And you really need to be big for that to be the successful, sort of case where you really have a lot of leverage against that audience, and a large audience for able to do that.
Another part here is that there's a big difference between building a media company that posts on Instagram and building a tech company that builds an app. The way you do things is just very different, and usually you need a different team too. So sure, be active on social media, but don't expect it to be a big part of your growth channel. It's a small part of a bigger strategy. Number 7, paid offline marketing. This does sound a little bit crazy. You want to do old school offline marketing for an app? Well, yes, actually it can work, especially right now where online marketing is so expensive. Suddenly, offline marketing looks like good value for money. I would say this works best in the beginning, where you can still do things that don't really scale. It's more about getting the ball rolling. It really does depend on the app, especially things that have a limited geography, for example, can work really well. I've seen it work for dating app Smitten that went to colleges to try and get the ball rolling. It is a way of getting the organic engine going.
That's the key here,
Yeah.
because it's limited. You're trying to drive a network effect of the school or a city or a town. Like, as long as it's pretty limited, it's probably a great idea to do.
You might not win the full US market with this strategy, but it is a way to get the ball rolling. Number 6, PR. Press. Vivino is quite a broad app that appeals to a lot of people, basically anyone who drinks wine. And it turns out that's a lot of people. This means that broad PR really works well for us, but that usually isn't the case for most apps. They usually appeal to a more narrow niche audience. This is about finding media that talks to your exact audience.
The problem with getting a TechCrunch article is that it spikes up the numbers that day, of course, like crazy, maybe that week. But what you'll also see is that because there is no intent from the users, they're not trying to find anything that drives value for them. They come here based on some sort of post, that came from trusted media they trust. That's why they go in there.
If you get really big download spikes because of press, be a little bit careful because it messes up your numbers. It can look like you're very successful, but these downloads might have no retention and have zero value in the long term. They might be there because of the press, because they're curious and might not have any need for the exact app you're building. Just be aware of that.
It is about, finding your narrow, like almost the more niche, the better in the beginning. Like essentially, we always sort of mess that up, right? Okay, what is actually niche and what is not niche? And I've learned right now, I run 22 apps, right? I've learned that niches are bigger than what we think. It tends to be, right? Because the thing about apps is that from day one, you have a global audience.
Totally.
And it's an important thing to remember. That's just like, and again, we go back to the intent, right? But anybody can find you in the App Store. If you are the best at what you do, in your small niche, you will be successful. You don't need to try and solve something for everyone, right? Just try and solve something from 0.00001% of those, and you will be successful. And eventually you can build something that's larger, and you can, there's a ton of ways where you can get larger eventually, right?
Exactly.
But it's hard to get there if you go broad too early.
So this can work, but you have to have press that matches your exact audience. Number 5, paid online marketing. Now this one's interesting. We know this one works. We know it can work incredibly well, but we also know it's a dangerous game to play.
This is a dangerous one because it is a great one. But it has its, you really have to look at it from two perspectives here. It was what really worked for us in the beginning. And I think it's really important to outline in the beginning. I've seen a lot of people, and a lot of companies in this space. So I'm not talking general, but in this space where eventually they do get to a messy place due to it. Imagine this, right? You're paying more and more and more money for worse and worse and worse use. And it's a very, very important thing because we're trying to look for things that create a positive networking effect for you. The more you buy something, the more you pay something for it, the more it drives just better users, better retention. And paid marketing, definitely performance-driven paid marketing, let's put it like that, that has the opposite effect for you. So the first dollar you spent, probably well spent. Second dollar you spent, probably, but worse and worse and worse. Right? So every dollar you spend, the worse it gets. They have to go further and further away from the core of people that they can find for you. And eventually you're going to get messed up because now the problem is also, now you got used to those numbers, right? Where it's like, once it doesn't work anymore, it's going to be cold. It's a bit like taking a plane, right? And you take it up, and it's fun, right? But then when it starts to, there is the tipping point where now we're in trouble, right? Because it's starting to dive. And when it starts to dive, you try to pull up the plane still. You really try to do it, right? But it's hard. It's a messy, messy journey. And I've been through it, so I talk out of my own pain here of going through it.
So make it a part of your strategy, but don't make it your bread and butter. You cannot rely on this. It will fail at some point. Now let's talk about how you should use it. First and foremost, online marketing is incredibly good for testing and learning. It can show you what messaging to use and even show you what to build.
I would use it any day when you start. Essentially, I wouldn't start anything until I started running ads against it. Right. So I would use the earlier you are in the journey, the more you should probably rely on it. But before you even start an app, right, let's just say you just have an idea around an app, right? Set up a landing page on your phone, right? Set up a landing. It's super simple. You can go do it any type of place, and then just an email sign up, and then run ads against it, right? Just $100, right? Whatever you have in your. Do something in the beginning to try and drive. I think that people like this value prop, right? Value proposition. And you can actually see if they do, right? Because what you're going to realize is you try 10 different things and you drive traffic there, and you're going to realize, oh, this one they really like. They didn't like the others. And it's about, when the audience sees something, do they obtain it or not? And I've run so many things at this point, right? And it's just, you can feel it when it's easy adoptable. Mm-hmm. If something is easy adoptable, now you have a shot. Then there's retention afterwards. All these other things come into it, right? But at first, you need to be something that people like. They want to download it. They want to try and use it. Then there's all other things you need to solve afterwards. But that's the early phase. So I would use it anytime you're trying to think about something where it's like, are people actually interested in this? I would use ads. So use it as a strategic, tactical tool, but let it not be your bread and butter of your growth strategy.
So remember, don't rely on this as your primary growth strategy. It will fail at some point. Number 4, influencer and creator marketing. This is about finding influencers and creators that talk to the exact audience that you want. That's the cool thing about this. There's so many influencers and creators out there that talk about all kinds of niches. There's definitely someone who talks to your audience.
I would say that's the modern strategic partnerships. That's the strategic partnerships you should actually think about. But certain influencers, they have your audience. You want their audience, and you build the tech for that audience, right?
Yes.
And there is a win-win for you going on here. You can actually align incentives in a way that drives great behavior, great outcomes for both of you.
Yeah.
So finding those, and it becomes an important strategy as well for you over time. We rely on it more and more as well. We have certain ambassadors out there. We have probably more than 100 ambassadors at this point in time. And we sort of try to help them, sort of create a business for themselves as well.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can enable that they actually, you have a sort of a product that is one of the most valuable for their audiences, then it works out.
One thing that works well here are just sponsored stories on Instagram, and it looks like posts on Instagram don't work as well anymore. The key here is to find the right influencers, the right creators that talk to your exact audience. Number 3, App Store optimization. We're getting to the top and the stuff that really matters.
The reason why App Store optimization is so important, and we go back to this, right? That's the intent of the users. These are the best users in the world. The problem is it's hard to scale, so it goes down. It needs to be the bread and butter, right? But the people that are searching for any type of utility where you pop up as number 1, those are the best users. There's just no way around it.
Oh.
Right? If you are searching for, I need to scan a wine, and Vivino comes up, you are solving a problem for them. If you are searching for a journal app, and I need to journal, and Reflectly comes up, you are solving a problem for them. It might only be 100, 200 downloads a day that comes from it, but those are the best 100, 200. There's nothing that compares to those 100, 200. And so it becomes, and that's what I mean with older cohorts, so it doesn't look like a lot in the beginning, but those cohorts compound. So it ends up becoming a great business for you down the line, because those 100, 200, right, they compound, right? Because they come in every day, and 15% of those buy, not only 2% or 3%, but 15% of those buy. And eventually that becomes your business. Eventually. A great product is a commodity. That's just expected. You don't get anywhere today if you don't have a great product. The cornerstone becomes, can you get the best distribution? That's the thing you have to try and do, right? You have to build a great product, and then you need to be able to, at the same time, find the distribution.
Yes, these are the best users. They're looking for something to solve this problem. They're even looking for an app to solve that exact problem. Yes, these are the best users. In short, winning in the App Store is incredibly important, because that's where the best users are. Number 2, content. Blogs, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. This is about building content that drives users to the app. It can be content on websites, blogs, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and many other channels. I did bundle SEO in here too, because search engine optimization, meaning Google and other search engines, can really drive traffic to this content. Basically traffic that comes from Google to whatever content you've built. This has worked incredibly well for Vivino. We've built content on millions of wines, and that content drives millions of users to Vivino. Something to be aware of here is that this is something that pays off in the long term. It can really keep giving for years, but it's not fast to build. It usually takes months to build, but it can keep giving back for years.
I would say you can put a bit more upfront investment into it. You don't need to see return this year. You don't need to see it in 18 months. You can see it down the line. You're probably going to experience that just from running raw startup, right? You probably see that this thing, it takes time, right?
Yeah.
It's doing the grind every day, and eventually you start to see it.
That's right, Jacob. It takes a while to build, but once the ball is rolling, it's a gift that keeps giving. Number 1, product-led growth, word of mouth. In the end, this is what it's all about. You have to have the best product that really solves the problem. They tell others about it and tell them to install it.
It's also probably number 1 in utility-driven apps.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being, of course, just like if it's your friend or your mom or your sister, whatever it is that is saying to you, you trust that person. And no ads or nothing. is just as good as someone you trust tells you you should try this. So it's an invaluable thing once it gets going for you.
Yes, this is the best way to grow, and it really works. For Vivino, this has been around 70% of our growth. Obviously, all products are different. Some of them are very viral, others are less viral, but do assume that almost all products have some kind of virality. At Vivino, we've seen that the number of active users correlates with how many people download it. The more active users you have, the more people will download the app. Active users create growth. Let's try and draw a virality scale from left to right. On the right, we have the most viral product. On the left, the non-viral product. Take a product like WhatsApp. That's all the way over on the right. It really doesn't make sense to use that product if you don't have one on it. So it's viral in its nature. Vivino is somewhere, to the right of the middle. You can work it alone, but it is a semi-viral product. Then you have something like Reflectly. Not really viral, but somewhere on the left of the middle because people will tell others about it. And then further on left, you might have products that people use but are not very proud of. They won't tell others about it. They're non-viral products.
It's hard to really scale, super hard to scale, but it becomes part of the bread and butter of your everyday. Then you get it going, right? Now it actually you have something fundamentally working for you.
One piece of advice I want to give you here is try and build the best product for a small group. If you build for a small group, it's much more likely you find product market fit. Once you have that, you can expand it, but at least you have something going. Also, when you look at this full list, make sure you use more than one strategy. Sure, number one always works, will probably work forever. The others are more fluid and they will change, so use more than one, preferably 3 that contribute in a meaningful way. Otherwise, your growth becomes more fragile and you can lose it all in a short time. Let's try and avoid that. If you want more content just like this, please consider pressing like and subscribe and you won't miss any future videos. Thank you very much for watching Raw Startup. Now stop watching and go build something.